Hi everyone, and welcome to the Lowercase B podcast. I'm Alex Burkhardt.
Dude, what is in the water here?
What do you mean? Tell me more.
So, I decided when I came out here, just to kind of pop in yesterday to see what was going on here. I had this sneaking suspicion that something special was happening. When I left, I called my wife immediately. I'm like, I just need you to listen for a second. I've been to so many Y Combinator demo days. I get pitched by founders all the time. I have not felt the energy that you have captured here in the room with these folks anywhere else. The attitude, the ambition, just the desire to listen and build blew me away, such that I had to call two other people just to tell them this is incredible. I think to sum it all up, everyone here listens and wants to build something to help anyone. When I was talking about problems to the team yesterday in that circle, every one of your folks leaned in and they would ask, "Can I build it for you?"
Yeah.
How did you capture that?
It's wild. I can't claim all the credit. Obviously, the students themselves are a special and unique bunch for a variety of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But we very intentionally designed a program that started, the end goal was to help people realize what they're capable of utilizing AI and to show them what AI is actually capable of. That was extremely frustrating for most people in the early days. We made some intentional decisions. But it worked. Now, we have set expectations and a culture where if you show somebody out there a software product, they fully expect to be able to build whatever you need in 24 hours, maybe 72 hours if it's really complex. That includes stuff that has never really been done before. They have just seen, we've gone through a lot of iterations of doing stuff that they would have previously considered impossible. And the reaction that you shared with me, I basically hear that 2 or 3 times a day. Random people will stop by and, it's usually like, "Oh, cool, a little AI school, cute." And then they walk out and they're like, "What? This," companies that come in, they come in trying to figure out if there's anybody they want to hire, if there's anything interesting happening. And I've had 2 conversations today with companies that are like, "We have to rethink our entire company. We have to rethink our hiring plan. We have to rethink what the next year looks like because the world just changed for me." So we're a little bit, it's so weird that we're swimming in this soup all day and that's the world we live in. And when we go outside and we make contact with the alien, companies that are operating in the traditional ways and not using AI as much, it feels like the Stone Age all of a sudden. And I don't mean like it's just, it's wild. I've never experienced anything like it. And I've, have the utmost respect for Y Combinator. It was an incredible experience for me.
Yeah. No shade on them. They're great.
Yeah. Love everybody. Love PG. But this feels like, and maybe YC feels different today, but this feels like the coming together of the right, it's stuff that I've been working on for almost a decade now, but this moment in time is unlike anything I've ever seen or felt. I mean, I remember I got the internet as a birthday present for my 8th birthday. And that was, a moment that blew me away. I remember using Napster for the first time. I remember getting an iPod for the first time. To me, this feels like a bigger shift as far as what the world will look like after versus before than any of those did. And as I say that, there's something in the back of my mind going like, you're overselling this somehow. Like, I know there's a ton of hype out there and I came in as an AI skeptic. And I think to this day, a lot of the hype is unfounded. You can only do so much one-shotting apps with, but I think we're at a unique time in the history of the world. And I think AI is a force multiplier unlike anything humanity has ever seen. perhaps including, you know, the steam engine and the printing press and stuff like that. It's the world's going to look very, very, very different 10 years from now.
It's incredible, and it's so remarkable. I started this podcast because I'm investing in AI. I'm talking to all these founders, and I kept trying to tell people, my friends, my family, about what's going on, and they just didn't get it. They didn't get it. So I put this podcast together so I could bring people on for long-form conversations, so people could feel more about what's happening. And yet still, coming here feels so much different, so much closer to like this future that we're in. I remember 6 months ago when you and I first talked, you mentioned, hey, yeah, I'm thinking of putting this program together to help people write with AI. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's cool. That could be pretty useful.
Yeah. And that's how I thought about it.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, solid business, good thing to do. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
But Gauntlet AI is incredible.
It's exceeded every one of my expectations.
It's a thing in and of itself. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, so I've been running schools for a long time. So I know, I feel like I've hit every pitfall that there is to hit as a school. So some of those, you can avoid early on, and it's little stuff like, even in how do you do the marketing for it, right? Our marketing feels abrasive, a little bit exclusive, but it has an identity. It has a point of view. And I mean, our marketing, we have a single page website, but everything that we do is very intentional, and we know who we are and we know what we're trying to be. And it's not going to be a fit for everybody at all. It's not going to be a fit for probably most people, the vast majority of people. And the way that we do things is unconventional. Sometimes the students don't like it. If I had less experience or less of an opinion, I would have said, we're going to defer to what the students want because they're, the customer every time. But they're kind of the customer. They're also kind of not the customer. And I have to there are a number of decisions that I've made where in the early days, students were frustrated. I'll give you a couple of examples.
Yeah.
One is when you come in on literally day one, we give you an enterprise app that you need to build. So our first week was a Slack or a Mattermost or something like that clone. And we say, all right, we teach a lesson on how to use product requirement documents to build with AI. And, here's Cursor and Windsurf, and here's Replit, here's Lovable, here's a few of the tools, here's how they work, here's how a model interacts a little bit. And then you have basically, I think it's 30 hours from the time that lesson ends to when you're supposed to be submitting your Slack MVP back to us. And you're not supposed to write a single line of code. AI has to write all of the code for you.
Why? Why do you screen for engineering talent, like software engineering talent, and then not let them write any code?
Yeah, it's counterintuitive and it's very frustrating. And it's not quite inversely related. There's a bell curve of frustration that happens where some of the most experienced engineers, they've seen so many shifts through technology. They started writing stuff when you had to physically have a server next to you. So this is just another new thing. So, the people who are less experienced, they don't have enough experience for that to be frustrating. The people who have like a few years of experience, they're just kind of getting in their groove of writing code the old way. If you don't force that, if you don't go all in, then there's kind of a curve of productivity that I think of writing code. Normally it's kind of a flat line, and when you start with AI, you're actually below that curve. You start out, you are slower. It is more frustrating than writing code manually. AI is it's obviously very smart, but it's also so dumb. And learning how to rein it and harness it and utilize it in the right way is incredibly frustrating, especially for someone who just got to that point where, show me an app and I can build it. Now you blow all of that up. You have to unlearn a lot of the learning, and AI is just a difficult to corral thing. It's a little bit probabilistic. It doesn't, if you're a good engineer, you're used to stuff always doing exactly what you say, and it doesn't always. You can send the same prompt 5 times and get 5 different responses. That's not what engineers are used to or good at. But if you do that, then you learn how to manage your context window. You learn how to plan first, and from the plan, pull off little chunks of code. You learn later on as right as you get comfortable doing that, then we throw you into bigger code bases that you're unfamiliar with, which is 10 times harder than building a greenfield app with AI. And then we throw mobile at you, which there's some stuff that translates really well to mobile. There's some stuff that you're like, Apple, how are you so far behind at this? Android, how are you so far behind? So it's a very intentional, we throw you in the deep end of the pool and you learn how to swim. But that's the only way that we know how to teach you how to swim reliably.
It reminds me, what you just described reminds me a lot of Ender's Game.
Yeah, we almost called Gauntlet AI Battle School.
Yeah.
But that was a little too, it's not like Gauntlet is less. Actually, it was probably a domain name thing that decided the name. But obviously there's some negative connotations that go along with Ender's Game. But yeah, we like the sink or swim nature. And I think that if everything in the school is just, hey, you know what, everybody's going to succeed, everything's going to be hunky-dory, everything's great, then you kind of default to the median of what people are capable of. We want to really take the governor off. We want to really see what people are actually capable of. And part of the design of Gauntlet is we remove a lot of people from the program.
Yeah.
I think we started with somewhere around 230 students, and we're going to end with around 110. That's planned for. And it starts really small, but it's also one of the most important elements of the way that we build things. I'm a big believer in selection bias after having run schools for quite a while. But it also allows me to say, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, I'm not offended when people withdraw. Not offended at all. It may not be a fit for you. There may be times in your life where this is a fit for you and times in your life when it's not a fit for you. But because we're not trying to cater to everybody, we can do something very, very special and very specific and very intentional.
Well, I remember when you started marketing this, and I took away, this was intense. You were being intense, and you caught a lot of flack on X just about the marketing, and you still do. And people challenge you, and you say, I understand.
Yeah.
But this is what it is.
Right now, students are in apartments about 1.5 miles away from this office. Buses come and pick them up at right around 8 a.m. and they pick them up to go home right around 11:30 p.m. And when people first saw that, and they said, and 7 days a week, Sundays we usually start around noon because some people go to church. That's the only derivation in the schedule. We do have social events sometimes, but yeah, it's roughly 8 a.m. to midnight every single day, the entire time you're here. I've been living that same schedule right along with the students, and it's hard. It's nuts. But if you're going to get to the cutting edge of AI and live on that front edge of AI, that's kind of what it takes. And just I need you to be on the absolute edge of AI, not a week away from the edge of AI, because if you can get on that edge, the curve is just vertical. It changes everything. And every day, I haven't even we have our Slack channels. We have a bunch of different tools that monitor stuff. I saw that OpenAI launched something today. I don't know what it is yet. I haven't had a chance to look at it. The students all know. When Claude 3.7 Sonnet came out, people literally ran around the building saying, new model's out, new model's out. Everybody starts pulling out the new model and starts playing with it. That doesn't happen if you're here from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It just doesn't.
No. How do you find the intensity in yourself to bring into this program? Because I feel your personality in all the students and in the pace.
Yeah. I think my mental model for pace is, there's some law, I can't remember what it's called. But stuff will take as much time to fill as you allow it to. And this is actually something I learned from the Collison brothers, and Stripe is an investor in Bloom Tech, which runs Gauntlet AI. They, the traditional assumption is that there's an inverse relationship between speed of shipping and quality, right? So if you talk to a lot of people, they'd say, yeah, we want something really, really good, so we're going to take a long time to ship it. They make the argument that in some instances, it's actually inversely correlated. So the faster you can ship something, the higher quality it will be. Not only, as time progresses, you get a lot more iterations, but that's counterintuitive for a lot of people. I think I've seen it enough that, and there are different times when we've run different experiments, even internally. If I gave you 24 hours to build a Slack app and you've never used AI before, and you have to use AI to ship it all, that MVP is going to look almost exactly the same as if I said you have a week. Almost exactly the same. So we believe in time compression a lot. Some students now are to the point where they're kind of working in shifts, so they don't want progress to slow down on an app, and they don't want to deal with merge conflicts, so they'll just have one code through the night and then pass it back off to the other person in the morning, which I'd still have yet to determine if that's the optimal way to run software teams versus having two people, pair programming with each other. We'll see, but time compression is really, really important to us. And I think, life is short. And this time in history is very short. There are 70 things that I want to build right now, and I know I could build them in a few hours, and every student feels that way. That's really important. That helps you do the stuff that is only most important. And there's a whole lot of fluff in everybody's lives and everybody's workday that you get to exclude.
Yeah. I mean, you have experience with enterprise SaaS. I've sold enterprise SaaS before and worked at many startups. And it's almost like we built companies around needing to buffer and save time for the engineers. And you need to raise venture capital so you can hire expensive engineers. Those engineers need time to get up to speed. It's uncouth to track their productivity. That's how we built companies. We can't really...
engineering is this magical
it's
thing that
magic.
You can't really understand, you can't comprehend, you certainly can't measure.
That's what they told us.
Or if you do measure, then you're going to over-index the wrong things. And I get the arguments behind that, right?
Yeah.
I get, that people tried to measure lines of code, and that's a really bad metric if you're trying to optimize for producing the most numbers of lines of code. That's bad. There are, I do think that if you're Goodhart's law of if you're not monitoring something, it's a better, I guess Goodhart's law says if the measure becomes something you optimize for, it loses its value as a measure. I think if companies aren't paying attention and a CTO wants to look at the number of Git commits or, number of lines of code committed and removed from a repo, it actually is a decent metric as long as it's not being gamed, which as soon as people know that that's what they're being graded by, it's really easy to generate huge numbers of lines of code. But anyways,
Toby Lutke at Spotify says the same, or at Shopify says the same thing. He hates tracking things because then he knows they're going to optimize for it.
Yeah.
Unconsciously.
That's a tough one. But yeah, so we kind of use deadlines, and there's some other stuff that we do to optimize for that, or to help us monitor that and to learn a lot from that, which that's also made easier by AI. But yeah, life is short. Time is of the essence. And I think my rough mental model, and I get a ton of flack for saying this, but I can't ignore that it's what I've seen, is what I'm used to. Like before I started Gauntlet, if I saw something and I thought that will take an engineer roughly a month, maybe 2 months, that's now what I expect in 24 hours. And companies think that I'm full of shit, to be totally honest. And the number of companies that have come in and I've been like, what's your biggest bottleneck right now? Just like, students will gather around and listen to what you're talking about. And a half dozen times I've seen them turn around with the product that someone has been anticipating would take 6 months to a year. I'm not exaggerating. I know that sounds like BS, but I can get founders and people who are in the room to vouch for that. And they
People need to come here and see it.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's unbelievable.
But yeah, I see that. There's literally a company that said they were planning on an app taking, between spinning up a new team and hiring for it and learning all the new stuff, they were estimating somewhere between 6 months and a year. And I was kind of like, I was trying to convince them to hire from Gauntlet. I was like, all right, like, watch this. Like, shoot me the requirements, do whatever you need. They're like, well, we have 2 backends. It's really complex. Like, okay, I don't, whatever. AI will handle all the complexity for us. Shoot over what you're trying to build, and we'll see what we can do. 36 hours after we started the project, I sent him a video of me showing the students had built it for iOS and Android. It was a mobile app. They'd integrated both backends. They'd done everything that they were planning to do, and that company's now like, oh, we need to hire as many people as we can. But until you see it. And that, by the way, that's an enterprise app that has, everything that shouldn't have been possible about that. And it was a guy who had built like one mobile app in his life, and he did it perfectly. Every experienced engineer would say that that's an unreasonable thing to do, and that if you ask that of an engineer, that it would be impossible, and that if you do it, it's going to be done poorly or it's broken for some reason. And it just wasn't true. Yeah. It was good. It was shipped. In 36 hours from the moment they started, from the moment they got access to the files, the entire mobile app was shipped. And I mean, companies see that, and then that's why I have the conversations around now my entire, not only does our dev pipeline need to change, but our goals can be much more ambitious. The way we structure our company is completely different. And it's a fundamentally different thing.
Why has it been, or why is it uncouth to raise expectations on the engineers like you were doing?
Yeah, I think traditionally, I do think it's kind of a defense mechanism that engineers have built up over time, where people who didn't understand or appreciate or care about the complexity that goes into building good software would demand things that were unreasonable and impossible. And engineers learned that, if you talk to a lot of product managers would like shield the engineers from the rest of the company demanding that stuff get built, and be like, no, you guys.
They're like an interference layer.
Yeah, you don't understand what has to go into this. So a product manager was the steward of, I decide what gets built, and I will tell you what the right time frame is. And you need to come to me so that you don't go harass the engineers all day. And the engineers, to be fair, like, the engineers were right. People were underestimating how difficult it was to build stuff. And so the smarter you were, the more technical you were, the more often you were like, no, you're overestimating what's possible. You need to slow down. You're not appreciating the intricacies of this. And I think that thinking carried to an extreme is so dangerous. And now, I mean, I still see it, we have staff engineers at the biggest company, someone that worked at Google, and they'll talk to an engineer about what they're doing, and the other engineer will be like, yeah, you don't understand what like working at a big company is like. It's like, no, I was at Google. Like, I totally understand. Yeah. I understand that, code bases get big and messy, and yes, that's different than trying to get Grok to one-shot a video game. I get that. And there's a fundamentally different way to do software engineering that's much faster, much more efficient. And if you know what you're actually doing, it is more secure, it's more stable, it's more scalable, and that we're used to making trade-offs in those things. And there is a possibility with speed that you leave things undone or you do things halfway, but you don't have to,
No.
So.
Well, we're used to those like faster, better, cheaper, pick 2.
Yeah.
Does that model hold true anymore?
No. Like that's the thing that I try to wrap my mind around all day is AI. If you have to go through a period of slowing down with AI. You have to get good at utilizing AI, which will make your productivity decrease until you get good at it. And then the governor's off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So changing topics slightly.
Yeah.
Prior to going to Silicon Valley, I was in the Navy for 10 years. And I was sharing with Spencer and Benji and Marcus when I was chatting with them. I get this feeling from the team. I know we're a week until demo day. Much like when you go to boot camp. If you've ever gone through a boot camp of any style in the military, there's that period right before your last week where you realize what you've done. You've accomplished something incredible. And you can't wait. In my case, I was in the Navy. You can't wait to get in the fleet. Mm-hmm. You want to see it. Mm-hmm. I actually am concerned in some ways that some of these engineers, if they don't go into a good company or if they don't start their own thing, they're going to enter the fleet and then smash right into that wall of constraints and get annoyed. How do you think about that?
We think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And there are trade-offs because there are companies that are ready to flip the entire way that organizational management is done because they think they've seen that AI is so different, but that's a tiny, tiny number. And there are companies that are like, there are companies that we've talked to that are like, I just want the energy. Like, we're old sclerotic, you can't get anything done. I just want like that level of enthusiasm and optimism. Like, you realize the level of enthusiasm and optimism is because they can do whatever they want.
Yes.
Not, those are related. So we've said no to a lot of companies. We try to get a sense of who they are and what their style is. And some companies actually aren't ready yet. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I don't want, quick moving force hits unmovable object to happen. There is the flip side of that, which, we had, and I'm supposed to keep all this private for now. The details private. But we had a single company come in a couple days ago and they're like, what is happening here is so special that I'm giving everybody in this room a blanket $200,000 a year job offer. And they went so far as they're trying to rent this building so they can just get the entire cohort of people coming back to this building, hire them all, and then put them in pursuit of their own stuff. And they have thousands of people, but they're like, we're not going to integrate this at all with the rest of the company. We're going to keep this special thing the way that it is, which, by the way, is an excellent pitch to the students because they're like, what we've done in 90 days, we wouldn't have believed. And so all they have to say is, okay, now just keep doing what you're doing. Maybe work less hours because this is unsustainable. But what do you think would happen if you did that for another 90 days and then 180 and then 270? And when you realize this doesn't have to stop and the growth curve that they're on doesn't have to stop, students get very, very excited by that.
Yeah, you even caught the attention of Brian Johnson. I watched him subtweet you on X, and then you had him come out. He came out and talked to the whole team.
Yeah, that was actually really interesting because I was like mad in the moment. I was like, shut up, Brian. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's easy for you to say now that you're rich that people shouldn't be working long hours and they still can sleep 8 hours a day. They get home at midnight and then they don't have to be here until 8:30. Like, that's 8 hours. You're good. And to Brian's credit, he actually reached out and he had somebody else introduce us. I'd never met him before. Funnily enough, we went to the same high school. So we have a lot of crossed paths that we didn't have any idea about. But yeah, he's like, hey, I want to jump on a call. I want to apologize. Like, I'm not in the business of it really weighed on him a lot. And then he was out here for South by Southwest, and I'm sure he's going event to event and everything was crazy. And he took time out of his day. Originally, it was just he wanted to come by and apologize for the tweet in person. And I felt bad at that point. I was like, I was frustrated in the moment, but we're good. I'm not offended. But he brought all the students in and he apologized to them, and which is a very, very gracious of him to do. He didn't have to do any of that. And he's an extremely busy guy. And then they all hammered him for 45 minutes with every health question that you could imagine. So have utmost respect for that guy. And I was in the wrong. I shouldn't have reacted the way that I did, and he was really, really cool about it. And so luckily for the students, we got a cool opportunity in part because of that. But yeah.
It's funny because this whole 2 days I've been here, and even in this conversation, I feel like when people watch this, they're gonna think this is a silly hype podcast.
100%.
Like this is a soup.
I can
like
see
an
it
ad.
now, and they're like, "Oh, these guys don't know what they're talking
What
about."
no one realizes is we'd already met. I just pinged you because I wanted to figure out what was going on here because I was watching from the outside. I was watching, and I'm like, it just seems like something different's going on. Mm-hmm. I hope that when people see this and they whatever part of this conversation, whatever people clip up, I hope they come and visit. I hope they experience this because it's so different. I don't know how people are going to build companies in the future anymore. I'm not going to invest the same way. After yesterday, I'm going to allocate capital differently. I'm looking at problems differently. I can't imagine after yesterday taking a pitch from a founder that isn't showing me an MVP and sending me a link of it that I can play with. Yeah. Why would I even do that?
Yeah.
And
even if you're non-technical, like
it sounds pretentious to say. Like again, I know we're going to get filleted when this comes out because people are going to say these two guys are hyping each other up.
Yeah, they don't know what they're talking about.
They don't know what,
and they're underappreciating the complexity that goes into the thing that I do because I'm a real engineer. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, no, I got a computer science degree. You know how to write code. I know how to write code. Yeah. We're not faking this.
Yeah.
I think the only solution is you have to see it. You have to talk to some of your students.
Yeah.
What's some advice you would give to people that are considering joining the next cohort?
Talk to the students of this cohort. That was one thing that we didn't have initially. So we announced Gauntlet publicly about 3 days before the first day. Sorry, did I say 3 days? 3 weeks before the first day.
Yeah. So people had 3 weeks heads up to apply.
People had, so people were hearing about it, applying, deciding to uproot their lives and move to Austin if accepted, getting accepted and putting in 2 weeks notice, often within a 24-hour period. And they had to do that with no references to go off of. Look, if you Google me, it's not all
pretty
a rosy picture. If you like it felt like, I mean, until if you gather students now and you're like, when was the time when you realized that this wasn't a scam? They're usually like about a month in when I got like the plane ticket sent to me.
Yeah.
And there's still some people that are like a couple weeks after that. Like
Spencer said his parents told him this was a scam.
Yeah. At that point, we very intentionally had the first month online and remote, both because it's 1,000 times cheaper, and because we wanted to, like, logistics of people deciding if they were in or out. Like it's a lot easier if people are still at home or doing whatever. And after they're in Austin, it's, we still remove people from the program, but it's not as fun. So we try to do as much of that before Austin as we can. But it was so fun, like watching it slowly dawn on everybody that, oh my gosh, this is for real. And there's still skepticism. I think it's mostly gone now. When someone, I tweeted about the person who walked in the office and gave everybody a $200,000 a year job offer, and there's still people in the comments like, "There's no way."
Full of hate. Yeah,
there are 100 something witnesses right here. Yeah. You can talk to any of them. Those students didn't have that advantage. They had to just go on hope and faith, and a lot of them were like, "I don't even care if this is a scam. This is so interesting and fun. Like, let's see what happens." So I'm a little bit sad that we'll lose some of that, like, super agency, let's see what happens feel, but I'll have to spend a lot less time talking people off a ledge about why is this real.
Yeah.
And the companies are all, I mean, we just had, we have, so there's a main set of companies that were, guaranteeing jobs to everybody. Then there are external companies that are kind of fighting for spots with those other people. And then one of the the big companies that was, backstopping everything. They're a big fund that has a bunch of different companies. I got an email this morning that was like, hey, there are 30 more companies that want to come in and pitch you guys tomorrow and see if they can hire some people. And so it's the first time I've ever actually seen the dynamic being completely flipped on its head, where the students are kind of sitting back and being like, impress me, and all the companies are like, here's why you should join me. I didn't think that would happen that fast. And I think that's just starting too. Because most companies, like every single company that has stepped foot in this door is fighting to hire students. There's not a single company that has come here and walked away not trying to hire. Even those that were like, yeah, look, we're not really hiring right now. This doesn't make sense for us. Or, they're getting offers that are at this level, so that's out of budget for us. And we charge a fee on top of that, which they're like, yeah, it's a recruiting fee, but that it's a relatively expensive hire in some scenarios, right? So there are a lot of companies that they come in being like, this doesn't make sense, but I just want to see what's going on. And then they walk out being like, what do I have to do to, there is an investor who came in who's like, I just want to understand this for my portfolio companies. And he's now telling his companies that he will give them additional capital in order for them to hire Gauntlet grads. It's that extreme. And I thought it was going to work. I didn't think it was going to work that well, that fast. So now we're trying to figure out where do we go from here? We just caught lightning in a bottle, I think. How long does it last? I don't totally know. Does it scale at all? I don't totally know. I know we need to keep quality over volume. But going from 1 to N is going to it'll be different. I'm really glad that, now I have all the framework for everything set in place. It'll be 10 times easier. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here.
I'm super impressed, Austen. Like, honestly, I didn't really believe it. I was excited to come here, very excited. I didn't believe it until I saw it. And I can't get out of my head how this is going to change companies. This is going to change how companies are built. This is going to change everything in the tech.
Tell me more about what that, not to flip the interview around.
No. It's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, how has your thinking changed? Because I'm still, I've had a few months of trying to wrap my mind around all of this to the point where now when I talk to someone who hasn't seen it all, it's like, I feel like we're speaking different language and we view the world so differently.
Well, you are.
But someone who recently experienced that, I almost want to call it like a conversion point. How are you thinking about things? What are you seeing?
Well, I decided to go independent, start my firm and start this podcast in March of last year. AI just appeared to be another paradigm shift. I remember when I first got the internet, much like you, I didn't have the internet growing up. I had to go to the library, borrow books, and I would write HTML in Word docs and then use a browser to look at them so I could make programs. Yeah. And I felt the same feeling in my gut that, oh my God, something's different here. And then that coupled with the fact that I've been in Silicon Valley for the last 10 years, I've interviewed thousands of engineers, hired hundreds. I know what killer talent looks like. And I know what it feels like when you've latched onto someone and it's special. And I can't get over the fact that, you hear these things about the one-person company, the engineer is getting 10x by these tools. I say these things, and I talked with other founders of other companies on my podcast about this. And the people I met yesterday, your students, have an infectious energy that only makes sense to people that I think that have experienced the most elite talent. I've worked with Navy SEALs. I went to the U.S. Naval Academy. I've seen the kinds of talent funnels like this, and you can just feel it when you walk in the door. And as someone who knows what that looks and feels like, I also know it's hard to describe. In fact, nearly impossible. But when your gut tells you this is different, I just feel attracted to it and want to move closer and closer. And that's exactly the feeling that I have. Is I want to know more. I want to talk to more. I want to stay here for another couple of days. I want to tell every company I have written a check into, every founder, to get involved in this because I want them to have the edge. Mm-hmm. Not because I think they're going to miss out, but because I think they're going to be completely left behind. Mm-hmm. because they're not thinking about the problem the right way. What's the saying in sales? Something has changed. And I implore you to look at this and see what I see, because you can't miss it once you've seen it. That's how I see it, Austen. And again, everyone that listens to this is going to think I'm blowing smoke up your ass.
We very legitimately did meet a couple days ago.
I know. I am one of the hardest people in the world to impress. Ask anyone that's worked for me. I had a guy who worked for me who left the company to go work at NVIDIA recently. And he said, Alex, you told me before you hired me, this is going to be the hardest job of your life, and you'll never, it'll be nothing you've ever seen before. And he texted me 4 weeks ago and said, you were right until I went to NVIDIA.
Sure.
And working for Jensen is different. Yeah. And I said, hey, I'm excited that the only person that's ever went up to me is Jensen.
Yeah.
I am telling you, I feel the same thing, where I can't overlook how different this feels. And I'm never going to look at software the same. And I've sold billions of dollars of software with some fantastic teams and incredible founders. And this isn't a knock to any of them. It just feels like we're in a different dimension and people can't see what we see. And that's when you know you have something special.
Yeah. I have to sanity check. Am I crazy? Is this a weird fever dream? But yeah, it's truly wild.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to there are very few people that I can commiserate with, We had Vivek Sidera, he was the founder of Superhuman, and now he invests and he lives in Austin. And he swung by just because I was we're semi buddies. I wouldn't say friends. I think that was maybe the first or second time I'd met him. And he walked out and was like, that was the highlight of my month. I wasn't, we were just gonna chat. And all I do with people is when they show up, students kind of hate this, but it's very effective. I just walk around and I walk up to somebody random and I say, show me what you're working on. And usually they're like, oh crap, it's not, I'm right in the middle of breaking everything. Give me just a second. But you give them just a second. They'll show you something and then, you see what progress they've made. You ask them how long they've been working on it. And then I just go student to student. I ping pong around. I had a bunch of, a hiring partner, they are now officially a hiring partner, came in a couple days ago, and I need to figure out how to hire an assistant. I had crossed my calendars, and so I had another meeting, and so I walked up to a random student and I was like, hey, can you show him around for a minute while I take this call and then I'll be back. And the call, he had another appointment, so I didn't even see him on the way out, and I felt really bad. But he called me and he was like, hey, I know that you sent me to that very special student who was the top in the class. I appreciate you trying to game the system a little bit. And I was like, no, he literally just was closest to the door.
Yeah.
He's like, but I'm really grateful that you were willing to give the best student in the cohort to me, because I do want to hire that guy. I was like, oh, that was completely random, but I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, Austen, it was a pleasure chatting with you. And again, we just met a couple of days ago. I know we chatted once a few months ago.
Anybody wants to shoot me a DM and swing by. It's fun.
You need to see it. You're building something very special. You're going to change not only people's lives. I think, unironically, you're changing the world, and everyone else needs to catch up to what you're doing here. It's going to change education. It's going to change how we build software, and it's going to make the world better, because we're going to focus on, frankly, the right problems, which is fixing the pain and the toil that we all experience. And the amount of time we spend on problems that don't matter because it feels like it's too hard. I feel like you showed me a little bit of the future, Austen, and I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's not me. It's all the students, but it's an honor to be a part of, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.